My name is Jeff Waldman. I do ScaleHR and SocialHRCamp. I want to welcome everybody here. We do a lot of these webinars every month with a variety of different vendors, and so we're thrilled to have Pinpoint here with us. And so, so we have two amazing speakers. One is like Bradshaw with Pinpoint, and the other is Kodish, and he's with hers. We're going to do this in a fireside chat manner. So we're going to include, everybody as much as we can. And so if you have questions, please use the Q&A feature. And then obviously, you give a chat to add your comments and so forth. And so this is a really good topic. And I mean, I always say that. But anyway, so this is a really good topic too. And we're going to be talking about the candidate experience, which obviously has been something that we've talked about, for years. And it's one of the most talked about priorities right now in hiring. But for many organizations, the challenge is to deliver a consistent, fair, and a human experience. And it's become harder and not easier. And I think that has to do a lot with, and then a bunch of other things. And so, today's challenge is not just about the recruiter effort, but it's also on the hiring system, architecture and so forth. Application volumes have obviously gone up, and then hiring workflow, become more automated, obviously, which is going to help. The candidate experience is now being shaped or reshaped by, structure of the hiring process. So you're not clear are candidates on the next steps in the process, how much friction there is in the hiring process, and then how our hiring team, follow the actual process too. And so in this conversation, as I mentioned earlier, it's a fireside chat structure this time, so we're using differently every time. We're going to ask a bunch of questions of both Curtis and Mike, and I want to get all of your thoughts as well. So once again, chat, please use the chat for comments and so forth. Use the Q&A for questions, and we will try to sort of bring them in to the conversation as we go. And so once again, this is being recorded. So we're going to share the recording tomorrow to all attendees, and then we'll have a bunch of cool pieces of content coming out tomorrow, starting next week, which is great. And so, so we're going to kick off with a bit of a poll. So on the bottom right-hand side, you'll get a little notification that there's a poll. So let's launch it now, and then we'll get into talking about Curtis and Mike. And so here is the first poll. Here's the question. What are you finding most challenging in hiring right now? So pick one. Pick the top one. So once again, if you don't see it pop up, go to the bottom right-hand side under the polls feature, and we'll give it a minute or two. And so once again, what are you finding most challenging in hiring right now? And pick one. So you've got a couple of votes coming in, so identifying qualified candidates, keeping candidates engaged, hoping we've got a couple more. Don't want to get your thoughts on this. We're getting on a poll. Answers we got. So it seems like trying to figure out identifying qualified candidates, what I think is safe to say that's the top challenge right now. So thank you for that. Let's just go. So we're going to get right into the actual topic itself. And so I want to welcome both Mike and Kodish to the webinar. And so I really liked for them to maybe just spend a couple seconds, a minute or so, to introduce themselves as to what they do, where they work, and their vantage point on modern hiring systems. So let's start with Curtis.
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Curtis Kodish, and like Jeff said, I work for Herr Foods. We're a salty snack food company in the northeast corridor here of the United States, located in Nottingham, Pennsylvania. Our products are sold globally, so we are a big name, but here on the East Coast, we're the largest family-run snack food company in the U.S., right? And so we strike a balance between small family company and, big scale of our salty snacks. I've worked at Herr's for the last 18 years, a lot of time in sales, a lot of time in sales management, and the last 8 or 10 years as a resource business partner. And so I oversee the recruiting for our sales side and, have opportunity to work with the folks that recruit for our manufacturing side as well. So we hire hundreds of folks each year and pretty actively out there, seeking good hires. So welcome to the webinar, and I look forward to talking to everyone.
Great. Thank you, Kodish, for that. Mike.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Rose. Hey, everyone. I'm Mike Bradshaw. I have been in TA and HR for about 15 years, with the last decade primarily in early stage environments, so pre-seed through Series A, often as that first dedicated talent hire. So that meant building hiring systems from scratch while the business itself is still evolving, figuring out how to make hiring work while things are really messy, fast-moving, resource-constrained environments. For the last 4 years, I've been the head of talent for Pinpoint. Pinpoint's an applicant tracking system. We're the ATS built for complex hiring, and I've helped scale the company from about 25 employees to around 100, which is where we are today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike and Kodish, for that. Dive into that. So we like little hearts and, from Moby popping me up. So thank you for that. So once again, comment in the chat. If you have a question, please drop them down in the Q&A feature. We're going to do this now with the fireside chat. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen. So we're just going to go camera here. So this is my first question for you guys. Here it is. Okay, you ready? We're going to do like a lightning question share. When you look back at your hiring process 8 years ago, so maybe we'll start with the traditional. Where did candidate experience breaks down most often? So we're looking back over the years, right? So where were the candidate experience breaking down?
Well, so if you look back a number of years ago, we had a contentious negotiation with an ATS platform, which led to us having a short window to renew and find a new vendor. We made a bit of a short-sighted decision, and we went with the bare bones, like a right out of the box ATS, and we jumped in there. And we didn't initially think it would have an impact, right? We thought, hey, it's a chance to save some money. And really, the friction that our candidates received when they applied, the number of clicks to actually apply for a job, the manual tasks and things like that with this ATS, it was really just our platform was not as functional or not as up to date as it needed to be to keep pace with our hiring in this.
Mike, do you want to answer that? Maybe from a vendor perspective, with some of the customers you've seen come through on own personal journey as well.
Yeah, I think for both sides of the equation, for candidates, there's frustration of feeling like you're applying and it's going into a black box. You're not hearing back. You're not sure of what the process is going to look like when you're going to hear back. If you make it into the process, not really sure when you're still going to hear back. When you are exited out of a process, if you don't make it through, hearing feedback. And so on the other side of that, right, isn't recruiters with bad intentions. It's recruiters that maybe don't have the system or the time or bandwidth to have a process that allows you to do that, or a system that allows you to do that. And so on the other side of recruiters feeling like they have too many applicants, not sure how to get the right signal from those applicants, and maybe not having a system that allows them to look across multiple roles in a really easy way to understand where their candidates sit, that can nudge them and make sure that, their candidates aren't falling through the cracks, that can make interview scheduling sort of simple. Those are the types of things where the pieces start to break down for candidates and recruiters, and why that was sort of a big challenge for teams back, I think years ago. Ultimately, you're looking for systems that can be flexible enough that you can have multiple hiring flows across different roles. We know that when you go to market for different roles, they're not going to have the same hiring workflows. They're not going to have the same rules or logic. They're not going to have the same level of hiring manager involvement. So needing to have a system that allow you to have that flexibility is going to be really important. And without that, I think systems start to break down. Candidates feel that, and recruiters certainly have felt that in the past.
Obviously, I've been in HR for 25 years. And so, always talking about some of the challenges, and then wishing that maybe there was something better, but actually making that change is hard. Then it's not easy. So I guess my question for both of you is that what are the signals, or maybe sort of one or two or more key signals that you that told you that your hiring system needed to change? Of course, there's a million things. Was there something that was really specific in terms of the signal that, okay, you need to change?
For us, it was sheer volume. When we changed to the bare bones ATS, we thought, what happened? Is this no longer online, or how are we losing this much traction this quickly? It was almost like a switch went off, right? Where one day applicants were flowing in, and the next they're just not. We had a third party vendor unpack a lot of that for us. We had up to 60 clicks to apply for a job, right? So it wasn't necessarily that people weren't seeing the job ad or interested in working for Hers, but when we got into the system, we found we're asking too many questions too early, long or confusing or even unnecessary steps early on in the process. And really what we found out is that people were interested in starting. They may hit that first initial click or 2 or 3, but they're not getting through to the 60 and then never appearing in the bucket for the ATS to identify, hey, this is a fresh candidate. So it was really self-inflicted for a while for us.
So Andrew has a very silly, not that silly question. What is an ATS? Yeah, is that a trick question? No? Okay.
Applicant tracking system.
Okay. So it's an applicant tracking system. So, for those of you who don't know, it's been around for a long time. It's basically what companies use to manage their hiring workflows. So think of it like a CRM almost, or say all different. So you can manage your workflow. Mike, did you want to add to that? So we talked about, one of the couple of key signals that okay, needs change.
Yeah, I think it's looking at how you're spending your time as a recruiter versus how you want to be spending your time. If you're spending a lot of time and with a lot of laborious tasks, you're chasing hiring managers, you're doing scheduling, you're doing a lot of low yield tasks, that's probably a signal that the system that you're working in, or the lack of a system you're working in, is not working for you. That's a big piece. I think in the last couple of years, a few things have converged. Recruiter workload is been increasing, but teams aren't necessarily getting the more hires. They're managing more process. There's more emails. There's more chasing, more coordination. That's definitely a red flag. And at the same time, recruiting teams are being asked to do more with less. We've seen recruiting teams get sort of smaller, but budgets have been reduced as well. Teams are getting leaner, and yet the expectation to deliver great hires and have a better candidate experience hasn't gone away. It's probably increased. And I think what's also made that harder has been the sort of volatility within the labor market. COVID, post-COVID swing and rebound. We've had tech layoffs, and then just, of course, just the uncertainty in the last year, especially in the U.S. And so hiring doesn't really move. I think for a lot of industries, at least, with the exception of maybe healthcare and a few other industries, doesn't move in a straight line anymore. It spikes up, it drops off, it spikes again. One quarter you're hiring a lot, then you're freezing, then you're doing a lot of sourcing. And then you've got 40 roles to fill immediately. So I think teams are having to oscillate between, being employers of choice, actively competing for talent, and then pivoting into maybe reduction mode. And so that whiplash is brutal on a recruitment team. And it really can expose every weakness in your process and system. And I think teams would be losing candidates that they shouldn't be losing. Job ads getting buried because competitors are moving faster, and no clear picture where candidates are dropping off because of either a lack of system or lack of insights and reporting. And so it's a combination of those things are all signals that it's time for a different process or updated system to help you.
Okay. So thank you for that. And so just for everybody, if you have questions, please put them into the Q&A, and then of course comments as well. So just want to shift gears here, just a little bit. So now that you're starting to improve your actual hiring process, and so whether it's Kodish at Herr, maybe it might at Pinpoint or elsewhere, and you talk a bit about what some of the changes that you've made and where have they had the biggest impact on the candidate experience?
Yeah, I think for us, there's a couple things. One is we focused a lot a couple of years ago on intake process. So that initial call or process with that hiring manager, and really getting granular with the profile of that candidate. So what we're going to market for this position, and really spending the time and being meaningful on the profile, what we're looking for, what the experience and skills that we're looking for, and being really intentional about that. And as a recruiter, not just being an order taker, really pressing the hiring manager on what they're looking for, what the outcomes are, and being pointed on what that discussion looks like. I'm calibrating on early profiles, really kicking the tires on that, being really clear on every step in the process. If we're going to have 4 interview processes, what's the point of those 4 processes? What are we assessing them? If there's these many people that are going to be involved in the process, what are they actually assessing? What's their point of view? What's their decision-making process? And spending the time up front, which can feel like a lot, it can feel like a burden when you have a hiring manager that's doing 100 other things, but it's really important. When you do that and you spend that time up front as a recruiter, you are going to have much more clarity when you have those 100 applicants that are in your inbox. When you're looking at 50,000 LinkedIn profiles, you are going to be able to cut the noise much more effectively. Obviously, when you're screening candidates, when you go to do rejections, you already have a very clear rationale that you're basing it off of. So it makes the process way easier for you, way more consistent, way more fair for candidates. And it is ultimately going to result in a speedier process. You're going to make decisions on candidates faster. You're going to align with the hiring manager faster. You're going to get back to candidates faster. And on your job posting and your interview process, you're going to be able to tell the candidates what the timeline looks like and actually know that confidently you can adhere to that. So all those things really pay off and benefit from a structured and meaningful intake process with hiring managers. And that's one of many changes we made. And that's probably the biggest payoff.
I have a follow-up question on that, but I just want to get to Curtis' thoughts.
Yeah, I would say the biggest change for us was just that upgrade in the applicant tracking system, using modern technology to automate those scheduling tasks, freed up our recruiters. We have 2 recruiters that recruit for 20 sales branches and multiple manufacturing facilities, from entry-level jobs up to vice presidents. With the new technology, our jobs were became much more visible on the job boards. At one time, we had to sponsor every job just to get them to be in the appropriate spot and to be competitive. With our relationship now on Indeed and utilizing Pinpoint for our ATS, I mean, our jobs flow. It's been great. The recruiters like the automation, and yet we still have the family company touch. We still have some hiring managers like to print the resume out and still talk to people and touch it. And you know what? It's flexible. We can still do that, right? It's a system that allows to bring on gradually. And the more we begin to utilize the technology that this platform offers, the faster, the more seamless, the better candidate experience, and the better overall hiring we're able to do day in and day out.
No, thank you for that. And I just want to share a comment from Brian. Brad's a talent expert in Vancouver, beautiful Vancouver, BC. So obviously the easiest way to hire that is going slow. And, totally agree with that. And so deep intake, lots of pushback and trade-offs to actually aligned on. And so I guess my follow-up question to both you and Curtis and Mike is much around technology. Obviously, I've been a huge fan of that. There's only so much that you can scale on a manual to human processes. And so obviously there's, Curtis mentioned Pinpoint, this is the plug for the Pinpoint. I mean, some of you might be using other tools, that's fine. But maybe just talk a bit about the impact that technology has just had on, it just allowed me to come here on making the candidate experience better. Is there one or two things that it's really done really well? You maybe think about that, Curtis, go ahead.
Some of the simpler ones are just the calendar availability, being able to plug yourself right in the time that works for you, as well as the time that's been identified to work for the interviewee or the hiring manager. Simple things like that. It seems small, but compounding year in and day out, year over year. It's just features like that, and utilizing the technology has just been a home run for our recruiting team.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, do anything a little different on that front?
Yeah, no, that all makes sense. And I think that the way we think about it is we try to automate friction, not judgment. So automation should handle the things that Curtis talked about: schedules, scheduling interviews, follow-ups, status updates, reminders, all the things that keep the process moving. When candidates are sitting in a stage for more the next day, nudge this person, those types of reminders. I'm sending automated messages to candidates that are waiting for a certain amount of time to give them that update. Those types of things, making sure candidates aren't slipping through the cracks. When you think about onboarding and all the other pieces where you're involving other stakeholders, whether it's in offers or background checks in those processes, when you have other stakeholders managing that process, so it's not all in your head as a recruiter, or it's not in your Google Tasks or Google Sheets, right? It's in the process, it's already built in, and it's sort of automated. And then humans, of course, should be handling decisions, context, feedback, conversation. So the goal, I don't think, is to automate more, but it's to reduce the noise that recruiters are managing so they can focus on evaluation and real engagement. And candidates are obviously investing real time and effort into the hiring process. They're preparing, they're researching, they're showing up. They're probably doing that often while working full time and caregiving and all the other things. So I think when the systems are inefficient or inconsistent, we're wasting that effort and we're missing out on great candidates. So the automation is not just about efficiency, but it is really another way that you can show respect for candidates in your process as well.
And on I kind of missed and being more cell phone friendly, right? It's the modern age. We found people aren't, applying at a desktop any longer, right? They're using their cell phones, and that's been something that we've fallen short of in the past, failed to kind of recognize that. It's a big part of the job application process from the very start today.
Yeah, that's a good point. I just want to pause here. Is there any questions out there, burning questions? Maybe get some people on camera, just unmute yourself. Maybe a point of clarification. Maybe you want to make a point to both Mike and Carter. Is there anyone that has any comments or questions? Before we continue on. I can see your heads spinning. Leanne, Feinberg? No? Okay. All right.
I mean, I can join the conversation. I saw actually, and there was an interesting question in the chat. If you want to run how to get when buy-in is low.
Yeah, so we've got a couple of really good questions here actually that just popped up. Andrew had a good question about startups. So what would be your advice for hiring or for startups hiring people? Seems like you would have to do everything manually. Even at this scale, should or can we leverage technology? And then if so, what tech? Here's a loaded question. What tech would you suggest? Any other startup hiring advice also welcome. So let me just so I'm going to add that obviously Mike and Cody will say go up Pinpoint, right? So the website is pinpointhq.com. But I'll ask, don't make maybe answer this question. There's something that's really specific. Before going too far off topic here, the really loaded question. And Mike, go ahead. But if you have an answer.
Yeah. So you said Mike?
Like, yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
So the startup question. Yeah. So I think for the startup question, I think a couple of things. One is there's going to be pressure when you're building out a talent function from scratch. Essentially, you're going to think about like the end goal of what a 500, 5,000, whatever person company may look like and what your ambitions are for that function and all the things that like a great talent function has to have. And I think it's really about prioritization and being just really honest about where you are and what you can deliver. And thinking about scale, right? What can we do today? And just being really intentional about that and being honest about that. So I think there's a prioritization question, one. And so just being very honest and not trying to do too much at once in terms of like your process and structure and tech stack and things like that. On the tech stacks question, I think is really starting simple. Think about what are the core features that you absolutely need? And again, I think starting with that question, how am I spending my time right now versus how do I want to be spending my time? What's going to give me the biggest lift? If I could remove, 20% of my time, which I'm doing on these things, what could I be spending it on? And what would that give me the lift? And is that in time to find, time to fill, time to hire, whatever it might be? And just thinking about that, starting with that, how do I want to spend my time? How can I free it up? That will give you at least the sort of features and functionality that you're looking for, and that can help you go out to market. And then the last thing I would just say is this is just broad when you're searching for tech. I think a couple things, especially if you're scaling and you think about, what is that end goal of that really great polished talent function I want to be, and we're going to be 500 employees in 2 years, whatever it's going to be. Look at the product release schedule of the products that you're looking at. And if you're looking at, I've narrowed it down to 3 ATSs that we can afford within our budget right now. Look at their release schedule. How quickly are they putting out releases? Are they keeping up with recruiting tech and the sort of recruiting market? And then of course, look at the support functionality, like how much support are you going to be getting as you sort of continue to scale. So I would really start there. I think is a good place to think about.
Can I jump in?
Yeah, go ahead.
So just to add, so I think everything Mike said is 100% accurate. I think where that might feel a little bit overwhelming though is scaling. So what scaling actually means, right? So 0 to 50, 50 to 100, 100 to 500, 500 plus. Those are very different stages. And so I think the number one thing you need to think about in the earlier stages is like one single source of truth. You need a tool that is going to be your single source of truth. Whether there's automation or no automation, you need one single source of truth, because if you start with bad data, you will never be able to transition into a bigger tool as you continue to scale with any reasonable data. And if you don't have good people and talent data, what happens when you go to try to fundraise is you're missing a huge chunk of the due diligence and all the reporting. So even if you start with something that doesn't have and I'm not plugging them by any means, but like if you start with something as basic as Bamboo, right, which is like $7 a month per head, gives you an HRS, gives you the most bare bones ATS on the planet. But if the data you're putting in there as you're using it is good, when you guys need to scale, you can switch ATSs. You can go do a Pinpoint. Oh, now we're at 75. We're going to be getting to 300 people. Okay, Pinpoint might be a little bit more expensive, but it makes sense from a long-term growth. At least you're transitioning good data in. So you need good data and you need a single source of truth when you're first starting. I don't care if it's an Excel spreadsheet. I don't care if it's Bamboo. I don't care if you decide to make the investment into like a big tool like Pinpoint or the other ATSs that are out there. You need a single source of truth with good data. And if you start those habits early, all the automation and all the good tools that are coming out of these ATSs today will then be able to, you'll really be able to leverage. Garbage in, garbage out, no single source of truth. It doesn't matter how automated or how much AI is in the tool, it's not going anywhere.
Great, thank you. So the other two questions we'll get to just a little bit later on, but I want to carry on. And so one of the things that comes up a lot is obviously when you're starting to make a lot of changes, is that you're starting to see your, recruiters where they spend their time. And that's the whole point. So maybe to talk a bit about how some of the changes that you recently talked about had an impact on that side of it. You're going to start with Kodish.
Yeah, so again, our recruiters saw more applicant flow right up front, so more quality candidates to look at, more qualified folks to look at. For us, we do all the front end recruiting in HR, and then we pass off the in-person interviews to hiring managers across 20 sales branches, different manufacturing facilities. And some of the key things we could leverage is Spanish. Some of the Spanish applicants, we're seeing a big influx in that in our manufacturing. That technology really helped us reach out to a broader audience, as well as, of course, that automation and scheduling and the great visibility on the job boards. All that front end recruiting stuff really made a noticeable impact where HR is now able to do front end recruiting for all of our sites. At times there was other people had to chip in to kind of keep pace, but now we're able to churn through as many applicants as we can get. And it's just been a big success for our talent and recruiting team.
Mike, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, no, it's really just it's speed. It's speed. I mean, we can move candidates along through our process much more efficiently and quicker. We're seeing less drop off because we're making sure that candidates aren't falling through the cracks. And so it's really just the speed, which is ultimately impacting our time to fill and time to hire.
So are you both seeing that you can handle more with less, and then you're not seeing a drop off in productivity and quality of work, obviously?
No, and we're in a unique situation while we're not a startup starting from ground up. We added a third shift to one of our facilities. We just built a new manufacturing facility. So we hired 2 shifts, brand new employees, not just replacements. So even when it fluctuates, we still had the capacity there to handle those peak recruiting periods with just the team we have on site and the technology available.
I just want to add one thing for anyone who doesn't get this. What Curtis does is way harder than what anyone who's just running an office does. So recruiting for like plants, territory managers, sales teams, and corporate is like the hardest type of recruiting and requires probably the most amount of systems. So that's not to blow smoke up, but just like for anyone who's just in corporate, I think it's really important to remember that like hourly sales, this is the worst when you put it all together.
Well, it's a diverse group, right? Entry level box packers, sanitation people. We employ 500 professional salespeople. We hire corporate from entry level accounting intern to I think we're hiring we're looking for a vice president of international sales. If anybody's out there and interested, right? So our two-man department tackles it all. That is a very good point. Maybe I didn't elaborate on that well enough, but it's quite a variety of jobs from part-time all the way up to executive.
Okay, thank you for that. So there have been a couple of questions here about AI, technology, automation. So I think it's a segue into that topic. And so this next question is, many rorecruiters and hiring teams worry that the automation functionalities now that are so amazing will make hiring feel kind of robotic, right? So what does the automation actually improve candidate experience? That's an open-ended question. Maybe start with Mike.
Yeah, I mean, first, I think it's important to distinguish between automation and AI. We're talking specifically about automation. It is making sure that candidates aren't falling through the cracks. It's automating that friction in the process. It's the interview scheduling. It's the nudges. It's making sure that there's reminders out for people that they're not forgetting about, filling out their scorecards, giving out feedback that they haven't circle back with candidates, that candidates aren't sitting too long. So those are all really positive things when we think about automation. And those are things that, candidates should feel. Those are things that are not, making the interview process or the hiring process less personal. It's making sure that there is more urgency and more reminders and more guardrails and structure and accountability for hiring teams to get back to candidates in a timely manner and make sure that things aren't living in a Google Sheet or in a recruiter's heads. Those are all, really positives. AI is obviously slightly different topic, but I think were we talking about that or not? Okay, fair.
Jim, this question. Do you want to add to the automation part of that? Not sure how it's actually helping the actual experience of the candidate.
I would say that it eliminates automation can be good, can be bad, right? We don't want to lose that personal touch. We're a family company. We want everybody to know like our culture, and we don't want to be so fast in hiring that we're overlooking things, right? But that automation, it just gets rid of the administrative work, the stuff, the accidents that humans make, right? Or I forgot to get back to somebody, or I didn't press send on that reply on that email. And it just ensures that the easy stuff is done easily and timely. And the candidates, oftentimes in the past for us, we're probably waiting to hear back from us. But with the automated emails, the text messages, being in Spanish, if they're Spanish speaking, like just all of this just eases that automation eases it, and it doesn't necessarily replace human interaction, but it does limit human mistakes, right? Frankly, or slip ups on the part of us.
So you're talking more like the admin pieces that are meant, right? Like in the admin process. And so I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things, there's a bit of a balance there, because sometimes like when I used to, be a job seeker back in the day, and I used to get the automated email, and it was so field. It was like this had nothing to do with anything. It sounded so, automated, right? But now the idea is to kind of balance the human touch, obviously, but having that speed, it definitely game changers.
And all the customizable templates, it doesn't feel like that auto response, even though it is, right? But we have custom templates for every job, every situation, and it makes people feel that our warm touch until a recruiter can actually, talk to them. And then, of course, they feel it over the phone from that first conversation.
Okay. So let's get to the next question posed. AI, which is one of my favorite topics. So AI is changing how candidates apply for jobs, right? So, that's clear. How does this affect hiring systems and candidate screening? So we're really focusing on the application. Mike?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the biggest shift is volume. I also think it's candidate sentiment, but we'll talk about volume for a minute. I think candidates, of course, are now can easily more apply to significantly more roles than before and easily customize their resumes and applications to jobs at a higher volume. So they're easier to create, they're more polished, they're more consistent. But the trade-off is that the signal is harder to find. And if you had polled recruiters a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, I think they probably would have answered that poll the same way, which is they feel like they have too many applications and not sure how to find signal. So now it's even worse and harder. So recruiters are spending more time managing sort of noise, for lack of better terms, and less time engaging with candidates. And so that's the risk, is that recruiters become more process managers than evaluators. And this is where the structure, I think, becomes critical, because you can't rely on intuition on any sort of scale. You need clear criteria, structured evaluation, because I think AI is exposing something that was already really true, and something I think we already knew, which was relying heavily on signals like pedigree, on degrees, CV polish, interview performance. Those signals have always been uneven. AI just makes that way more obvious. I don't think the answer is necessarily more tools on top of that. It's better discipline in how we evaluate candidates. It's better structure, and it's that intake and understanding exactly what and how we're hiring for, how we evaluate candidates throughout the process.
I'm kind of curious to know if you've been able to leverage AI in the application process, or what that's kind of having an impact on the candidate experience at first. You have to be finding about, obviously getting the polished resumes, things that don't make sense.
Yeah, I haven't seen that big impact yet from where I sit with the AI and the recruiters. Like Mike said, it's a more level playing field. Folks can just throw that resume in there and get a more polished result. But I haven't, our team is still able to navigate through and look for things like job stability is job stability, whether you have a polished resume or not. Like there's some things we can hang our hat on day in and day out that the recruiters learn to identify, right? We really use that and get at the core of the applicant through asking culture questions and fit questions where, and not let the AI shiny resume kind of fool the recruiters, for example.
Let's turn our attention to Leanne question. Go ahead.
Well, it's not so much a question, but just kind of a statement. I think one of the things with all these great tools that bring to the surface is that you need quality recruiters now on your teams. It's no longer a role that you can learn your way into. And I think that's been a huge shift in the market. Over the last 10 years, anyone who and everyone who wanted to be a recruiter was given a platform and been like, here, you can go be a recruiter. And these people aren't trained, they're not developed, they don't understand what great recruiting looks like. And with all of this AI stuff, what you actually need now is a much smaller team of TA professionals who are extremely skilled and who are exceptional recruiters. That is going to be your ability to get exceptional talent. It is not going to be promoting an office manager who's 1 year out of school into a recruiting role because they're nice. Because an exceptional recruiter is going to be able to work in tandem with all of these AI tools and really find this exceptional talent. You're going to find people who are going to be much more willing to pick the phone and have conversations with a higher volume of people to find those diamonds in the rough. So it's no longer okay. You're not going to get anywhere with really junior recruiters or people that have never been properly trained and guided and understand how to build a really strong TA practice. For any of you that are hiring talent acquisition folks today, or any of you that are working with external TA teams, and I'm very happy to work with you if you're working with external, but the question that you need to be asking them is, how have you built your practice? How have you built your talent acquisition practice? What are the key tenets of your talent acquisition practice? Because if they can't answer that, you can give them every tool in the world, you can pay them all the fees in the world, they can't deliver.
Yeah, excellent. So I want to segue. There's a question from Matthew Stewart about often using AI interview to automate the screen. And so what that is, it probably has to do with like Nashville, with AI agent doing the actual, program screen to either audio only or to audio and videos. So what are your thoughts about that? Mike?
For us, in our size and our scale, it's not something that we would do necessarily. I think for us, with the level of automation and tooling that we're using and the process we're going to take candidates through, I think that first initial conversation for us is really important that we meet them. And that, for us too, I think about almost half of our candidates I'm sourcing. So half of our hires come externally. They're not actively applying. I'm going out and finding them. And so it's even more important that they're having that first initial conversation with me. I'm very much selling them on the company and talking about that as well, and answering their questions. And while I'm sure that the AI tool, I'm sure there's great ones that you can load with lots of great information with all the context that's in my head could easily be loaded in and can answer their questions. That relationship, I think, is really important for us. And there is going to be some automation that they're going to experience in the process, right? When I move them to the next stage in Pinpoint, it's going to send them the context for the interview. It's going to ping them. And they're going to maybe get a sense of that this is an automated email. But I've built that relationship with them. I'm checking in with them. I've already had that sort of rapport established on the sort of bookend. So that's really important for us. And so, yeah, just that's just for us in our stage in this labor market right now. That might work because there's more people than jobs. But yeah, that's where we are at with it.
Just very quickly, Kodish, would you entertain,
We explored that and I heard of some of our competitors, some of our larger snack food competitors do that as a first step. Not for us. The family company, the culture, we want to talk them, we want to touch them. I mean, we want to tell them how great it is to work for Hers and really how important their job is to us, right? So we did explore it, but not something that went far at all.
So I want to, don't touch them. Thanks. So just sort of one, just segueing into the next question, and then we got a couple of questions from our viewers. So the next question has to do with high-performing hiring team. Okay? So what do they do differently when designing their hiring processes? And so looking at, obviously, I'm this question to both Kodish and Mike, but is there something that they do differently I'll just put a list everything.
Well, you know, like I guess a high performing recruiting team for me, somebody that's really delivering and matching my hiring manager's expectations, learning what they're looking for and identifying it over time. For us, it comes through experience and connections with our managers. And then as we get those recruiters dialed in, recruiting for each different department or each different hiring manager becomes like a task of its own. And having that touch to be flexible with each job and each hiring manager is really, for me, what a high level recruiter can do is flex to their audience and still deliver the end result of that qualified candidate.
That's what you're saying, that to really be like a business partner, basically. Okay. Mike, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we think the most successful TA teams that have a seat at the table, the leadership table, at least a member of their team, if it's a larger team, and they really have the full business context. They understand where the business is going. They understand every hire that's being sent their way. They understand the rationale behind it and how critical it is, the prioritization behind it, whether it's net new or backfill, and the implications of it not being delivered on time, right? They understand the context behind it. And I think that enables them to make a shift from being, you know, an order taker to a real strategic business partner. And that allows them to be real intentional about the process design, which I think, and I've already talked about this, but like really being intentional about going to market for this role, being clear on what exactly we need to be looking for and how we're going to assess them, what the process is going to be, and really being thoughtful about what each step is going to entail, what the candidate can expect, and having those things lined up before you even open the job up.
Yeah, obviously we talked about quite a bit in the last 15 minutes. So there's only 10 minutes left here, but I do want to ask a question about, you know, I'm a huge believer in when you're making changes, you know, respect them all. And so if people on the webinar today can, you know, take one thing away to actually improve the candidate experience now or tomorrow. So what is one change that they should make? But let's start with Mike. Maybe you want to start with that.
Yeah, give feedback. You said to improve candidate experience?
Yes.
Give feedback.
To the candidates.
To the candidates, specifically for those that interview with you. I understand it's scale. You can't for rejection. You know, we try to do through workflow automation a bit for inbound candidates. We can give them some semblance of feedback, but obviously the 1,000 applications for a position, it can be very difficult to. But 100%, if you meet us, if you interview with me or anybody in the team, you're going to get detailed feedback. And we think that's table stakes. And not just you're not a fit, there was other candidates, but actual feedback. There were 2-3 things missing or whatever it might be. We think that is absolutely just really, 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 really important and table stakes for candidate feedback, for candidate experience. And we think that's owed to candidates for them spending time with us.
You know, for me, one thing I would like to change moving forward, or things that we're constantly evolving, is are we checking those candidates for that good culture fit? We spend a lot of time on the jobs, the abilities, the background, but are they going to fit with that team? And there's a way to figure that out, to ask the right questions, to put them in the right positions. And you know, for us, that's our next step to ensure we're hiring good culture fits that want to make a career with our company, not just as opposed to just filling that entry level role over.
Good, thank you. Maurice, did you want to chime in and ask a question?
Yeah, so thanks. Hey Jeff, good to see you again. So I work in early talent acquisition, and today, so this is going to build on what Mike just said. Like today, I had a student who had 3 offers on the table, and they needed to decide between the 3. They equated the speed at which a company communicated with them, the touch points that they had, and how the process went from that high touch level to like the culture of that company. And that was the deciding factor for them. Is that position better than the other 2? I have no idea, right? But that's what the candidate is agreeing now. Some of you may be on the call. Well, that's just the student's perspective. I don't know. You want to risk it on like some more senior level candidates that are looking at that? Because I think, you know, for looking for work, it's probably one of the most stressful things a human has to do. Buying a house, choosing a mate for life, and then looking for work, right? Like, are they going to want to deal with AI agents? Or are they going to want to deal with humans? And there is a real anger amongst people right now that they're getting ghosted and not hearing from people. And it's the one advantage I think recruiters had over AI, which was like, I can follow up with you and give you some actionable feedback, even if it's not moving forward, right? So I think this is something that needs to be really focused in on quite a bit because it is affecting how you hire people and how you bring in, because guess what? These students are talking to each other. And again, I'm only looking from the student perspective. I'm sure it's happening amongst some of the communities that you're engaging. So thanks for everyone for this insights.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, really important. Look, I mean, ghosting has been around for a long time. I mean, I've been ghosted more times than I can count, probably, over the years. And it really puts a really sour taste in your mouth about the company. And we didn't really intend that, but that's how it comes across. And so, okay, so we've only got a couple minutes left here. And so I just put up a slide here. If you want to learn more about Pinpoint, please scan the QR code. We are going to be sharing this webinar tomorrow. Get an email with a couple other goodies in there. To watch for that. And so I just want to say, in summary, there's a couple things here that I just want to mention. The first is really, candidate experiences, often treated as recruiter behavior problem. Okay. But in reality, it's increasingly a hiring system architecture problem. So we're organizations that, deliver a great candidate experience, typically focus on, trying to reduce friction in applications, obviously, designing clear hiring stages, automating data work, and then really making sure that they preserve human judgment to where it matters most. And I think we talked a bit about that today. And so obviously when hiring systems are built intentionally, both the candidate and the recruiter benefit. And that looks different for every organization. And I think that's the key thing. And so we obviously heard from both Mike, Bradshaw, and Kodish. I mean, Kodish works for a foods organization. Mike works for a tech company. So very, very different vantage point. So are there any last questions before we say bye to each other? Does anybody have any questions? Did I miss anything? Feel free to unmute yourself, comment. No, you know what? I have a question. There's a question from Stephanie, and I do apologize, Stephanie, for not asking it earlier. The stakeholder buy-in is low. The question is, do you have a suggestion for when the recruiter, hiring manager, and other internal stakeholder buy-ins is so low for new tool, technology processes? Is there anything that you want to add to that? Mike, maybe you have an answer for that?
Yeah, hopefully you have a sense of what their pain points, if they have any pain points going into whatever tool you're buying, if it's an ATS. So if they hate doing manual interviews or whatever it might be, insight into how many candidates do I have, or when are you going to fill this role, whatever it might be. So figure out what those pain points are, ask them either beforehand or if you already know them, and then do some, I would do like a sort of sizzle reel. If you can, like on the tool that you're going to select, even if you kind of know the tool, like I already know which ATS I'm picking, but kind of enroll them into it. If you don't have the time to do it, ask the AE, whoever's selling you the tool. I'm sure they will do it for you to help close the deal. And just say like, hey, they have these 5 things that the hiring managers hate about the system or hate that we don't have in the system. Can you put together like 3 minutes that I can drop in Slack, a PowerPoint or a video or YouTube link? And then you can say to your hiring managers, hey, you said you hate these 4 things. Check this out. What do you think about this tool? And ask them, what do you think? Hopefully they will say, this is awesome. If they say they hate it, then my advice is really bad then. But I think they'll say that they like it and they're excited about it. And I would start there.
I think one thing, that always comes up is instead of focusing on the features and function, it's always about the actual problem. And so if you focus on that, if you can, bring down the amount of pain and problems that the hiring manager are actually experiencing, it doesn't matter what the tool is, then that's a good thing. And they don't have all day to sit there and start looking at little features and functions. I geek out over that stuff, right? But most people don't, right? So anyway, so thank you for that.
Just want to add one thing to that.
Yeah.
You should be asking the absolute bare minimum from your hiring managers when it comes to your ATS. The recruitment team is there to manage the ATS and do everything. The most bare minimum should be coming from the hiring teams, meaning they should have to do like a scorecard or, send you a Slack around like people that they like, but they should be spending the least amount of time humanly possible in the ATS. And that should be owned by the TA team, and that should be reported to the hiring team. The other suggestion, because I've definitely had people, I usually negotiate like, let's do it my way for one search. And if you absolutely hate it, then we'll figure something out. Because if you're doing your job right and you're using the tool right and everything, and you have your process down super smooth, they're going to get a great experience, and then they're going to have buy-in. The issue is if you ask them to do that and TA doesn't have their, part of my friend's shit together, and it's not organized and it's not smooth, you're never going to get them on side.
Absolutely. So on that note, we're out of time, but this conversation didn't end. So I will send an email tomorrow, to everybody, and so once again on job, and we run the, and so I will share the details tomorrow about where to get registered for the upcoming one. So I just want to thank Kodish. I also want to thank Pinpoint for their support here as well. And Erin and her team. So to everybody, have a fantastic week.